I have 4:30 and somebody's left the gavel over here, so I'm going to wrap the gavel and call our meeting to order for this evening. The Anchorage Equity Committee of the Assembly officially in session. And
make sure your mic is on. Mic.
All right, y'all got to record me. Okay. All right. The Anchorage Equity Committee of the Assembly is officially in session at this moment, and greetings to all. Thanks to all who could come and be a part of the physical meeting. Co-host, co-chair is online, Miss Thea. She's there and waving at each of us. And so we're called to order. And so first up is welcome and introductions. And I guess I'll begin. And I'm Pastor Leon D. May first, pastor of the Desert Community Church, and president of the Interdenominational Ministerial Alliance of Anchorage and Vicinity, as well as president MLK Foundation of Alaska. And here I am. And we'll just go around the room. I guess we'll begin on my left.
Joey Sweet, Anchorage Assembly Representative for District 5, East Anchorage.
Robin Dern, Anchorage Assembly Representative for District 2, in the Chudiaki border, Peters Creek, Jay Bear area, virtually.
Hi everyone, Felix Rivera, Anchorage Assembly Midtown.
Alrighty.
Junior Amavai, Chief Equity Officer, Municipality Anchorage.
Candace Bell, Alaska Rainbow Elders.
Alrighty, and we'll go online. And Ms. Thea, we can start with you.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Great. Hi everyone, it's Thea Agnew Ben, one of the co-chairs. Good to see you all. I'm in Bethel, so I'm joining from the Bethel Library.
Alrighty. Eyes on that. Allie? Are you there, Allie? Teresa?
Yes, I'm here. Teresa Holt from AARP, Alaska.
All right, and I can't see the other name.
Indra.
Indra?
Hi, my name is Indra Vega, and I'm with the Alaska Institute for Justice.
All righty, and Mira. Okay. All right, Allie, can you hear?
I am, yes, sorry about that. Hi, everyone.
All righty. Thanks to all who are able to be in the meeting on today. We'll move to our unfinished business, and we have review and adopt the annual plan, and I trust that each of you had an opportunity possibly to look over the annual plan prior to coming to our meeting. And for time's sake, or I might ask, would you guys prefer that I read the annual plan, or do you have your, okay, it's kind of long and lengthy, and I trust you've had a moment to engage with it. I guess I'll start out, I'll go out first and look at some things in hopes that we can adopt a plan in a reasonable amount of time on this evening. And there are just some notations that I made. Beginning down at number 2, under how will the Equity Committee engage with the Assembly, other committees, and the community, and down to the B part. Let's see, B, C, and D has this is to be determined in parentheses, and as it relates to the B part, the committee may assign a member or two to attend other committee meetings, and I would just add as needed to that, and do it that way as it relates to possibly approving this, and because it says it may assign, and so we can do that as needed. And I kind of put the same under C, co-chairs and members parenthetically, and may be assigned to attend full assembly meetings to report out on our committee as needed. D, the committee may provide written and verbal testimony from the committee to the assembly as needed. And those are my observations for that. We can do that as we determine the necessity of doing it. And so what is your pleasure, your input on those additions? Anyone? Hearing none, then I'll go to the F part of number 2. The committee will invite Anchorage Ombudsman to attend meetings. And I guess my parenthetical question there would be, do we want to say as needed? Or do we want to say as an additional perspective on topics? Or do we want to say as a member? That's my input. What are your thoughts?
I'm actually okay just leaving it the way it is, rather than qualifying it in any way.
Okay. So, I mean, is that an extended invitation, just blanket?
Sure.
Okay.
Come if you want to come.
Come
Come if you want to come. I know our ombudsman also attends assembly meetings as well, so I wouldn't want him to feel burdened.
Alrighty. I've been to a few of them. I hadn't seen them, but just FYI. Yeah. Anyone
Pastor
else?
May?
Yes.
This is Teresa. I would agree with Candace. I'm not sure, because what if the ombudsman had to investigate our committee? So he shouldn't be a member of our committee.
Well, I had a question about that too, Teresa, and that's a good question, because that was one of my questions relative to the statement inviting to attend, because he has to investigate kind of everybody in the municipality on some level, and so that was kind of my thinking in asking the questions that I did in the qualifications therein. But if it's your pleasure to leave it as it is, we don't have to spend an inordinate amount of time on it. We can leave it as is if that's the pleasure of the group. Do we have a consensus? Hands? Alrighty, then we do it by consensus. I see you guys, and we'll leave that as is. And I did have another highlight under number 3. I guess it would be A1 or 6, Roman number 6(1). Roman number 6, it provide input on resolutions, ordinances, or other assembly work brought to the committee. And number 1 says this is often time sensitive and need to have a process for when we need to meet between meetings. And I guess my question would there be, is it possible for us, and maybe one of the assembly members might want to rein in, or Ms. Jasmine might want to rein in, let us know what's acceptable or whatever. Is that something we can do by email in between meetings amongst committee members? I'm pretty sure we can do called meetings. That was another question mark. So between those two, what is actually acceptable? Can we do emails between committee members if something comes up? Is that acceptable? Or somebody might want to see this?
Yeah, thanks. This is Felix. So it is acceptable for up to 3 committee members to email each other to come up with some type of input on a resolution, ordinance, or other assembly work, and bring it to this committee to get the full committee's buy-in. Otherwise, if you're looking at sort of in between month-to-month meetings, you would need to schedule some type of either virtual or in-person or combo meeting.
Okay, so it is possible to have a called meeting in reference to that. And Celeste, we're at looking at this moment, number 3 on the priorities, plus annual plan, that's 3, Roman number 6, number 1. And so it is possible to have a called meeting is what I'm hearing. I mean, we could call a special meeting of the group, yeah, because I guess the reference point here would be those things that would need attention prior to having another formal meeting, and how would they be addressed? And so the only way that we're looking at really getting it done without 2 or 3 people trying to speak on behalf of the committee then would be a called meeting. And so I guess that would answer that time sensitivity and the need for a process. So I guess can we put in there as it relates to that in the event of a time sensitive need that we would just do a called meeting, especially called meeting. What say ye? Any commentary? Is there a consensus? Let me see a hand. All right. Thea, I see your hand. Is that for consensus or you had a question or some input?
I just had a question because I'm not sure I heard everything correctly. So if it's time sensitive, we would publicly notice a phone call meeting. Is that what we were saying?
No, not really, because if we communicated in between meetings, no more than 3 persons could be in the conversation, and then we would not have the input of the full committee relative to that time-sensitive issue. And so I guess the only way we can get around that 3-person limit would be having a specially called meeting.
And that has to be publicly noticed?
Yes.
All right, I was about to say that was above my pay grade, but thank you.
So just one more question for the because I'm taking notes. How many days ahead do we have to publicly notice?
Do you have that, Jasmine? I believe Jasmine's going to look at it, but I believe for special meetings, I think it's 24 hours.
Sounds good. You good, Thea? All right. Anyone else? Question, commentary?
I just have a comment, and I'm sharing this because when we first brought this into existence from the former committee, we talked about how great it was that it wasn't so rigid, and how we were the equity committee and we're going to do things the way, and it just seems like all that's out the window. That we are so structured, like the regular municipal committees. So I just wanted to share that because there's been some concern about that very thing.
Well, as an addendum to that is my heartbreak about this. And once accepting and being a part of it in this manner, it seems to be somewhat counterproductive to how we were operating before. But since we are an official assembly committee, then there are some constraints that are imposed upon us as a result of that. And so here we are. Yeah.
Through the chairs, it is 24 hours for a special meeting.
Thank you, Ms. Jasmine. All righty. Yeah, somewhat constraining to say the least, but we are a committee of the assembly. Yeah. All righty. So everyone is cool with the called meeting aspect of it? We good? Okay, we go forward from there. And I'm just going through with some things that I noticed, and then if anybody else has something, we can go and get that as well. Under number 4, activities to address the priorities. 4A, establish regular structure for engaging with other assembly committees and full assembly to identify issues being addressed by other committees that this committee wants to engage with within our priority areas. And 1 says identify process to engage with the assembly and relevant committees on hot topics to make immediate changes. And I don't know how hot and how immediate is immediate, but I did say this as it relates to interacting with assembly committees. I guess my recommend at this point would be for someone from our committee to get on the committee's agenda of which we're wanting to speak to. And so when they have a meeting, we can get on their agenda and speak to the issue with that specific committee. And then relative to engaging with the assembly as a whole, then my input there would be that we engage and get on the Rules Committee agenda, because all of the assembly members are part of the Rules Committee. And so those are just some recommends that I took note and thought of while going through this. And so what say you? Anyone has input? And I might ask these assembly members who are here, would that be a good way of going about doing that? If we wanted to engage on a hot topic and have see some changes brought about, we could meet with a specific committee that's handling that, or we could meet with the Rules Committee, because everybody's on it, and handle it from that aspect. Is that a go?
Yeah, thanks. I guess it depends on the specific scenario, right? But generally, yes, I do think if there's a hot topic, and if it's a super hot topic, like, oh my God, I need to talk to someone about this right now, you should get on the phone and talk with that committee chair, right? So that's one. And then two, yes, ask to talk to that committee through the committee chairs and be put on their agenda for discussion of a specific topic. And it's up to the committee chairs, or three, the Rules Committee is also an appropriate avenue.
All right, thank you, Mr. Felix. And so I think that would address that part of it. And any other input, questions?
Just have a point of clarification on this one. Are we actually just approving this annual plan, or are we attempting to flesh out the annual plan at this time? I'm a little bit confused, because if we were to approve the annual plan, we would approve it as written and then at a later time identify those processes. That if we're attempting at this time to flesh this out by identifying processes, that's like a different task, and I'm just not quite sure which one we're doing.
Okay. Well, the bottom line is we have to approve it, and my thought on that is, my thinking on that is, and that's just me, we can go another direction if you guys choose to, but my thought process on it is that the determinations and corrections that I'm making reference to are so minute that we could approve it along with the adoption and save us a step. And instead of going back while we're taking time now and have to do that clarification, we can do it all in one step. That's kind of how I'm viewing it. And so as far as what I have left, I only have one other thing, and that's on the last page under D. And number 3, designate time for specific projects, working with other, put an S on committee. And bodies and committees, put an S there, and I'm good for my part. Does anyone else have any input? Thea, you have some input?
Could Jasmine read from the chat?
Yes, through the chair.
I just wrote in there.
What we said at the last meeting was that we would review the draft and approve a working draft, and that we would have another work session in a few months to flesh out further.
Okay.
So
And who are listening to? Who's it?
Yeah.
Okay, it's in the chat. Okay, yes. Go ahead.
So, Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we go ahead and approve this working draft as Thea stated in her comments. I don't recall them all, but I make a motion that we do just that.
Okay.
If I could get a second.
Second.
Motion and second. All in favor?
Can I just ask a quick question?
So, question.
Are we approving the draft with the pages that Pastor May suggested? Because I've been taking notes on them.
Just a second. Yeah. I missed that. What was that?
Just are we approving the draft with the changes that you just suggested? Because I was taking notes on those.
I didn't hear all of that. She was thinking what?
She was asking if we're approving it inclusive of the comments that you made, because she was taking notes on that. And so, yes, with the comments that Pastor May made, including.
Okay. And I'm grateful for a point of order. We need to get another second on that non-assembly member.
This is just too much for me.
Yeah. All right, we've got a second. Ms. Candace has seconded that. And do we have any other questions for discussion? All in favor, aye. Opposers, like sign. Like you looking down there, y'all can't vote. Opposers, like sign. All right. How about you guys online? Everybody's good?
Yes, Pastor May, thank you.
All right, we're good. And so the approval is, as pre-stated, the approval is with those notations that were already made. All right, good. So we're good there. And as Ms. Thea indicated, we can do some further work on it at a future time, in addition to what we've done. All righty. Next up is the review of the Asian Pacific Islander and Desi American Action Resolution for April 25th regular assembly meeting. And Ms. Jasmine, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I do think that this is not the final and that this draft is still in process of being worked on. Am I correct? Maybe Ms. Alley can help us with that.
Through the chairs, yes, but I'll let Allie speak on it.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, so thank you to everyone who helped contribute to drafting this resolution. This is, I think, a really great example of some of the important work that this committee can do to offer a lens of equity and honestly just community authenticity to the assembly. So thank you to Lucy and Toppy who took this to the community to draft something that really represented what the community wanted to see out of recognizing this Heritage Month. The draft that you see before you came from them and was also, I think, pretty close to finalized and is in a really good place. What I think would be valuable for this committee to take up at this time is any further edits to the resolution. I'm more than happy to transcribe and kind of track those edits, and then at the end of the day, it would be really great. And maybe Felix, you can weigh in on this as well. I think it would be really great and would go a long way to show that the committee approves this final version that then is submitted to the agenda team to be placed on the April 25th. Let me just double check my dates. Yes, the April 25th meeting agenda. With that, let me think. I know that there are a couple of edits already kind of in the works amongst this group. So I wanted to make sure that we made space and opened the floor to receiving those. But maybe first we could have, let me see, is either Lucy or Toffee available to talk us through what this resolution entails and those important aspects?
I see Toffee's online.
Hello all. So full transparency, I was not a part of the drafting of this resolution. So I know that Lucy did all the work with other Asian community members and folks from the Native Hawaiian Pacific Islander community, but I was not a part of it, so I cannot speak to the resolution.
All right, thank you, Toffee, for that. And back to what I was alluding to a minute ago, Ms. Alley, is I was under the impression that, and I thought the email was sent to you relative to someone wanting to make another edit to the resolution, and so that was the basis of my remarks, that I didn't think we had a final document. But and to your statement, is there anyone in the room that wanted to make any edits to the document? Ms. Dern?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I figured that Lucy would not want to put her own name into this document, but I feel that she should be part of it. It seemed to be missing when I read through. So I went online and I did some research, and I can read that now. It's just a short paragraph.
Yeah, I couldn't remember who did it, but it was you.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
So I wrote, whereas Luciana, and I'm sorry if I pronounced this incorrectly, Tuga Hansen, who came to Alaska from American Samoa in 1985, has been an exemplary leader in her community through helping to launch a Samoan language computer school, the Polynesian Association of Alaska, PAOA, and the Polynesian Cultural Flag Day, and by representing the community through her leadership roles on the board of both Bridge Builders of Alaska and the Anchorage Polynesian Lions Club. So I just wanted to be able to recognize her considerable contributions to the community as well. And since I was not part of the process, I'm just putting it out there, and what happens next, it has no bearing to me. I just thought that she deserved to be honored as well. So, thank you.
Okay. And so that was the basis of the email I was speaking to, Ms. Alley. Yes.
So I'm just a little concerned that one of our own members of this committee was not invited to participate in was not able to contribute to the information in this resolution, and I'm not sure why not, but as we're adding names, Toffee is really instrumental as well, and so there's just a number of individuals that we could add to this resolution, and it would be thousands of pages long. But that just concerns me, and I'd like to also see her name and possibly some others included in this resolution as well. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right, thank you, Madam Celeste. And I basically agree with the fact that I haven't sent basically my thoughts on it because during the process there were 2 or 3 additions that kept being made of someone who had made contributions, and I'm sure they're significant contributions, but we could run this out for a long ways with everybody who's making contributions. Mr. Felix.
Yeah, thanks. So I guess what I would suggest is that the committee move this forward as it is presented, and that a group of up to, because this is going to be, I think it's slated for the April 25th agenda. So let me just double check. Yeah, so you guys will meet after this is approved on the Assembly. So if there's interest among members of this committee, that a group of no more than 3 members look at additional language and send that language as a proposed amendment to the Assembly for consideration. That way we don't have to dig into that and spend our time today coming up with amendment language.
I have another question.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm wondering if that will allow Felix for everybody to be able to have a chance to review and make comments to the chairs.
So, sorry Celeste, this is probably gonna make you cringe. But so what could happen is 3 members come up with the amendment language. Through the clerk's office, that amendment language is sent to the entire committee for review, and then the clerk will compile all of that suggested language, and then that will become a final amendment for the committee to review.
All right. What I would suggest there is this. that this committee make the decision that the group, the committee that has been working on this resolution, finalize the resolution, and whatever that finalization is, it's accepted by this committee. And that is what is proposed for the assembly. Yes.
So if I can respond to that, I'm concerned about that process, because that process is what did not allow for a member from this committee to participate in putting together this resolution. So I'm not sure
Okay, I see the point. I see the point, and then I guess my question at this particular point would be, what is the possibility, the availability, the process for going back, since we're all about equity, and have some real inclusion? What would be the process for that? Anybody who can answer that?
Sorry, say that again.
What would be the process for going back and have the inclusion that should have been had to begin with? As speaking to the concern that Sister Celeste had, what would be the possibility of going back and including that committee member to have input in the process? Ms. Dern.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Ms. Dern, who's speaking? Just a minute. We get back to topic. We get back to topic. Go ahead, Ms. Dern.
Am I to understand correctly that as long as everything goes through the clerk's office, people could make suggestions for change, and it wouldn't matter how many people, it just would have to go through the clerk?
Well, what I heard the statement from Mr. Rivera was that if folk had amendments to the document, they could submit all of them, the edits, to the clerk's office, and the clerk's office could compile those and to a single document. And once that is compiled, then that would be the document. Right. Is kind of what I heard Mr. Rivera saying. And that would not require another pass by this committee, in as much as what I was saying would not require another pass by the committee as well. But then the question arose subsequently is how do we get the inclusion of a committee member in the process? Taffy, you were about to say something?
Yes, I was gonna offer that, like the resolution as is, I agree that this is like, it's amazing, it's well written, it's good. I think the only language that I wanted included in there, which is the reason why I was hoping that I was going to be in that discussion, was more educational language around how equitable data could be desegregated between the two groups. Yes, we can continue to work together as communities of Asian descent and Pacific Islanders. However, when it comes to collection of data, there is a need for desegregating of data so that we can understand the actual and current state of our communities that we serve. Speaking with Lucy, I know that Powwow works specifically for the Polynesian community. For Pacific Community of Alaska, we work specifically for Native Hawaiian Pacific Islanders communities. But our data continues to be combined with the Asian communities, which then gives us a very different way of looking at the current situation in our own community. Especially, we saw that during COVID, and so that was the only thing that I wanted to add in there. Whereas I wanted to, hopefully there's a whereas where these communities continue to work together. However, there is a need for desegregating of that data. I think that's the only language I wanted to add in there. I do not want to have my name on there. If I did not want any of that. I just wanted to, like at least have that knowledge in that in this resolution where we're also asking the health department, please disaggregate our data, because then we will then see the current state of our communities that we serve. And so that's it. I'm not asking to have my name on there. I'm not asking. It would be great to add the Pacific Community of Alaska, because we are a Native Hawaiian Pacific Island serving organization, and that's all I wanted to do. So.
Yeah. Taffy, let me ask you this. As it relates to the process that was alluded to a moment ago by Mr. Rivera, is it possible, or would you be amenable to doing this? Is it possible for you to get that whereas statement addressed like you would want it, and submit that to the clerk's office as an inclusion point in this resolution, and that would be a way of having some inclusion in this resolutional outcome, if I could say it that way?
Yes, I can. I can draft something up and then send it to Rivera for to add to the resolution when it comes to the assembly. And yeah, thank you very much for the opportunity to speak.
Yes. And Ms. Dern, the edits that you wanted, and if anybody else have any edits, I think we can conclude on that specific process and get everything to the clerk's office, get it set in one resolutional document, and go forward with it. Yes, ma'am.
So my thought was that we would have 3 people from this committee take the information and then submit that one packet to the clerk's office, so that there's not these 3 different situations going on. And so that was the only thing I had to add.
Okay, when you say 3 different situations, what's the reference?
Well, so Toffee would be one person, then we'd have Robin, submit hers, and so that's 2. And so, instead of just having individuals, there'd be the one complete, we'd add the whereas and the other whereas. It'd be one complete document that we'd submit to the clerk's office.
Okay. And I guess I'm missing something. That's kind of what I was stating a second ago, that she could get her edit in and he could get his edit in, and the compilation would be in the clerk's office, and then we'd be good to go. That's kind of what I think what I said. Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
I think I understand what Celeste is talking about, and I'm happy to work with Toffee and anyone else who wants to be a third to just compile it into one document to make it easier for the clerk's office. I think that's what Celeste is alluding to, and that way too, we might be able to make the whereas flow a little bit better. And so I'm happy to work with whoever wants to, and to be able to submit that to the clerk's office very shortly.
Then that will save the clerk's office some work as well. But I guess my thought on that would be this: since there's a third person needed, then we probably would need to have some type of contact with Miss Lucy, and that all of the work that has been done already on this document, at least the 3 of you guys would be included in that process. That's my thinking. I mean, we would not want to, how can I say this, be guilty of coming on the back end with exclusion after all of the work while we're trying to have inclusion. And so my recommendation would be that she would be that third person, and they would work together on it. Yes, ma'am.
Through the chair, Jasmine, how quickly do you need this?
I'll have to double check the date for when it needs to be submitted, but for the I know, give me a second, I'll look it up for you.
I know it goes to, according to this document here, it goes to the Assembly on the 25th. And how long before that we need to do it? Yeah. And while she's looking that up, is everyone okay with that committee-wise, with that 3-person process? I think that would include those persons who need to be included. Mr. Sweet.
Can I ask sort of a clarifying question about what all the language would be added? Like what kind of whereas statement would we want? Because as referenced, we could just go down the list and just add more and more people into the actual whereases, but are there any specific whereases that we want to add? Because we could just do one that's a general, like, whereas that the contributions are so lengthy we can't list them all in this. We could just do a sort of general one like that.
Yes, and I did have to say Mr. Rivera won't speak to it, but I did have a follow-up.
Yeah, thanks. So just summarizing the whereases that I heard during this meeting, there is a whereas regarding Lucy. There is a whereas regarding the data and how we can better track and segregate data. And then there's another whereas that was suggested to include the Pacific Island Community of Alaska. I believe that is the organization's name, which I don't think that organization, which is another nonprofit organization which provides services to the Pacific Islander community, is included in here. Thanks.
Right, and my thought process is following that is relative to Mr. Sweet. I'm thinking that as you've enumerated them, Mr. Felix, those 3 whereases or clauses are what we're talking about in making an addition to this resolutional process. And so my thing is, if we could get those 3 persons together, to get those 3 together and add them in some shape, form, or fashion, then we can come up with a document that's ready to go to the Assembly. And I guess what I'm trying, you need to say something? Go ahead.
Through the chairs, so that date would be April 13th at noon.
April 13th at noon. And I guess I'm back to where I was a few minutes ago, and that is this. Once they finish that particular process, that 3-person committee, and submit it, then if I'm getting clarity on what you were saying, Mr. Les and everybody else, then we as a committee would be good to go as it relates to the work that they put in for that. Yes, ma'am.
I just want to really quickly go back to the 3 whereases. And I do agree that Lucy's name and maybe a sentence just like the other ones here can follow in an already established whereas.
Okay. Sounds good to me. All right, and so the committee, the 3-person committee can work on that, and so everything would be inclusionary, and we'll be good to go. And so I guess I'm back to where I was as far as the committee itself. And those of you who are online, are we good with the process? And are we in consensus that once that 3-person committee has reported to the clerk's office on this particular document by noon on April 13th, then we as a committee would be good with the resolution? Candace?
Yes. So essentially, you're saying we don't need to see it again. We're going to trust what goes in.
Essentially, that's what I'm saying.
Thank you.
Yes.
I'm good
Thank
with that.
you. Yeah. Online, somebody was saying something? Ms. Thea, you good? I see a thumbs up. Okay.
Good.
Ms. Alley?
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify if the 3-person group is assembled. I think Robin had mentioned that she's on board, that Taffy would be on board. Is there a 3rd that's already looped in?
Now, the third that we would have to make contact to, because she's not in this specific meeting at the time, would be Miss Lucy Hanson.
Okay, so she would have the opportunity to kind of,
Right.
Okay, that makes sense to me. Maybe just like from a procedural question standpoint, Felix probably knows best. Felix, thank you for being the resident expert when it comes to this kind of stuff. But if one of the committee members, say, was like later today, grabbing dinner, and a thought popped in their head, they're like, oh, we should mention this. Would they be able to email Jasmine, for example, and like have that incorporated, or are we sticking to these 3 people and they're the only people that can make edits on this?
Did you know?
Well, I was, but you know.
Go ahead.
Yeah, no, what I was going to say in that particular regard, once this committee has been appointed by this particular committee, anyone with any edits would have to pass through that committee before the final got to Jasmine.
That all makes sense. We're talking about subcommittees here. I love it. Okay, cool. Thank you.
Yeah, Mr. Felix.
Okay.
You good? All right. And then that would be the process. So that 3-person committee would have the final document going into the clerk's office by the 13th at noon. And we'll be good, and you'll be good. All right. Thanks. All right. Good to go. Good to go. G to G, as I would say. All right. Next up, we have the update on the committee's community events calendar, and I do want to give the appropriate thanks to Ms. Jasmine and Ms. Alley for working on this method of assimilating this Anchorage Equity Committee Assembly community events calendar and having it all ready for each of us. And so, if there are any updates that either of you need to give on that, explanations or what have you, now would be, you can do that.
Through the chairs, so Allie and I are still working it out, but what we've drafted is similar to the what's ahead for the assembly members. We figured it was just the easiest way to lay out all the events. So like I sent out the email, if you just send me the events the week prior, following up to the close of business the day before the meeting, I'll get them in an Outlook calendar, and then I'll lay them out so that everybody has them. And then I'll distribute any event presentation materials, which I think I did that yesterday, so that everyone has access to them. And so everyone's events are available. And then I'll let Allie speak on her portion.
Yeah, thanks, Jasmine. One of the exciting intricacies of assembly business is the Open Meetings Act. So that's where this rule of 3 comes from. And as your communities and organizations have these really great events, I think one of the benefits of being a part of this committee is being able to share those out. And so I would just hate for a technicality to stir anything up. So when you submit an event through this process, I'll also publicly notice it, which adds it to the municipal website and says that, this is a community event and a special notice of the assembly, so that if there are 3 or more committee members or 3 or more assembly members that come to the event, that it's all good and we have followed the law. So, I think that this is a really exciting way to bring your events forward and to have them be a part of this committee's conversation, but also have them land in another place where, Google searches and that kind of thing will find them. So, Jasmine created a specific email address for this, as well as other business or questions that you might have for staff support of this committee, and that is simply aecstaff@anchorageak.gov. And so we look forward to supporting you and the work that you're doing, and appreciate your input and feedback, as this is a new process. And, I think that it can evolve over time as well. But this is where we're at for now. And thanks again, Jasmine, for working with me on this.
Thank you, Ms. Alley. And again, in a nutshell, this is a great source for getting your events out to the public, John Q. Public. And for those that are upcoming, you have them here and now. Thus far, anyway, until we get under some new business here.
Through the chair, I also put this on our committee webpage, so it's also available there.
Thank you. All right, any questions or commentary for staff? All right, hearing none, then we'll move on to new business and committee updates. Any updates that are not already shared on the calendar that someone might want to bring?
Mr. President,
Yes.
I have tons of updates and events that are coming up, but I'll go through the process. And how far out can we go? Is it whenever or?
Through the chair, so we typically ask the week prior, but if you want to send them to me, you can.
And that would be the week prior to our regular meeting?
Yes, correct.
Okay, yeah.
Sorry, I think just to clarify, Celeste, I think your question was like, can you send an event that's happening like in October?
I'd like to just get them all.
Yeah.
Through the chair, absolutely. Yeah, just send us everything you got and I'll put it on there.
Great, thanks.
And I think she addressed that when she said you could send them to me. Yeah, she compiled them. But anyways, thanks so much. I did see someone, I guess, ran an email through, and that would be upcoming. And the person kind of put it in your court as it relates to Juneteenth, things that are coming up relative to that. But that's at a futuristic time. And okay, so no one else has any updates for present that didn't make the calendar? All right, not hearing anything, then we'll go to assembly updates, and we'll hear if there are any updates from the various assembly members here, and then we'll host Mr. Rivera, representing the Housing and Homelessness Committee, and is on calendar for today. But any of the other committee members have any updates? Assembly members, I mean, not committee members. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I am working on two resolutions right now, and one has to do specific, well, actually there are three. One has to do with hate speech, and it was actually language that was forwarded to me through the Anti-Defamation League. It's been used in various states at all levels of government, and it is a template meant to be tailored to the communities that decide they want to use this language. I have let Dean look at it first because I certainly don't want to bring anything forward that in any way would not pass muster with our legal department. And so there were just a couple of things that Dean said that he would make some suggestions on, and he should get that back to me soon here, this weekend, he was thinking. And so what my question is, and I'm not sure, Felix, but now that we've talked about it in a public forum, is this a document that through the clerk's office could be circulated to the entire group? Or I just don't know the process through a committee.
Yeah, I would say not until the document itself becomes public. So if you had it like here today, then yeah, it'd be fine.
I do have it here today, but we'd have to print it out because I mean, I could forward it to everybody, but can we get that printed out?
Through the chair, I have to run upstairs, but I could print it.
Maybe we should, maybe we should wait until Dean said that if we wanted to get this on for the April 12th meeting, we'd have to have it out or on the agenda by the 1st. Or I'm sorry, by Thursday, next Thursday, which is before the 1st. So we could print it out, but I guess we should, just so.
If you want them to look at it today.
Yeah, okay. I'm sorry, I didn't realize that was what we had to do. It's my fault. And then the other two are not as, well, one has to do with the Holocaust Memorial Day. And so it's something that I'm just going to be bringing personally, but I thought that it might be something that you'd be interested in knowing about. And it has language in there regarding anti-Semitism and how important it is to remember the lessons of the Holocaust. And then the other is a resolution commemorating the 80th anniversary of the campaign in the Aleutians and the people who were interned at Attu. And I'm looking for partners within the Alaska Native community so that we are approaching this properly. That will be after my time, so I will certainly pass that to another assembly member if that work isn't done. But I just wanted to bring that up here so that you know that those are things that are being worked on right now. So I think, Allie, do you have a copy of that one resolution?
Through the chair, Assemblymember Dern, is it one of these that you had sent earlier?
It's a condemn. Is it something that says hate or extremism? This is right.
Resolution.
Yeah.
Extremism. Yeah. It's got to be that one.
Yeah. So that's the one.
Run upstairs and all.
Okay, let me ask this. This is a resolution condemning hate and extremism, and is this something that this committee needs to act on before? I heard something about the 12th. Is that an assembly meeting or what?
April 11th, yeah.
No.
So I'm unclear whether or not this committee actually needs to act on this. However, obviously, I didn't want to do this without this committee involved. With that said, if this committee wants to hold it and work on this at a later time, I'm absolutely willing for that to happen as well. It's just I'm only on this body for a short period of time, so I'm only able to move these things forward in the process that I have. So what Dean said was that if we wanted this on the April 12th agenda, then we needed to have everything submitted by next Thursday. If that's too quick for this group, then that's absolutely fine. But then this group will have to take this document and probably work with Felix or Cameron, because Joey and I won't be here anymore, and that is absolutely fine with me. So that would be up to you to decide. I certainly don't want to step around the committee. But the reason, just as Joey came onto the assembly with an issue that was very important to him, this is an issue that actually before I came onto the assembly I had talked to my representative about, and this was in the works, so to speak. And so when I was able to come onto the assembly, this was something that was very important for me to move forward. Thank you.
Yes, and I'm thinking that part of our process is the ability to speak to resolutions and ordinances that are brought to us for that specific purpose, and as stated in our document. And so my thing is, as it relates to this committee, and Thea, you might want to chime in on this as well, but I guess my question to the committee would be, this is a resolution that Assemblymember Dern is wanting to bring and have approved in an assembly setting, but is this something, and you might have strong desires one way or the other on this as far as input or whatever, but is this something specifically that we need to speak to prior to her presenting it to the assembly?
So you were asking the...
I'm asking the committee.
Okay. I can respond, and I believe it is certainly something we need to respond to. And I think it's urgent that we respond to all the hate that's out there in this community. And I think that's one of the main reasons why this group formed. So, I mean, I was going to ask if that document is more than one page, because I was trying to see if I could read it just from the screen. That's how important it is to me. And one other thing I want to share is I'm appalled that, there's hate language within some of our police officers on their websites. And so, and when you share this information to the chief, it's their the response is, well, it's on their own personal page, so there's nothing they can do about it. So I believe, this is something we need to really get behind as this committee and support, so that maybe somewhere down the road, police officers, regardless whether it's on their personal page, will have some consequences for putting hate language on their site. So
yeah, there are a lot of entities that have specific input into what their employees can or cannot post even on their personal sites. And in other entities, people have lost jobs behind that kind of stuff or been reprimanded severely because they're representing a view that's different from the organization or department or entity that they're working for. And so, yeah, there should be something relative to that. But let me say this relative to what we're speaking, and I kind of felt that, I'm sure others, even though you may not have said anything yet, but I've kind of felt like this would be one that the group would want to strongly speak to, and that's why I put it before the group to speak out now. And as you were stating, I understand this is something you really would like to see happen, transpire before you are out of here, but...
Chair, thank you. I actually don't have ownership. I believe this is a community issue, and I believe it requires a community response. So frankly, I'm just happy to put some language there. Although I am, like I said, the reason that I brought it to council was because I myself felt that some of the language may go a little too far for our community. I want it to be apolitical. There were words in there that I questioned whether or not they were correct within our own rules. And so we haven't even received the draft back from legal at this point to know what we should change. So even if you read this document today, you'll understand the overall sentiment behind it, but this is not going to be the final document. So for it to go on the April 12th agenda would be great, but I don't want to circumvent a process. So please do not in any way think that I have to have ownership or get it onto the agenda by a certain date. I want for everybody to be able to get behind the wording. So whatever it takes to make that happen, just because I'm new and I don't know all the processes, I'm not certain that you can deliberate on this via email. I'm not really sure that you can. So yeah, I'm not really certain what you're having.
My recommendation, and I see Mr. Sweet, but my recommendation, and I see you, Ms. Thea, as well, my recommendation on it would be that we push the can up the road. And since we have a document that's incomplete, that once it's completed, it could be disseminated to the whole committee. And then all of us can take a look at it and possibly get back and have it on the agenda to deal with in our April 27th meeting. And that would just be my recommendation. Ms. Thea?
I guess I was going to suggest two things. One, maybe we do for this what we did for the last one, where we find maybe 2 or 3 members who want to work on this as the draft gets reviewed by legal and gets moved forward. And then those committee members could also then reach back out to the full committee and kind of bring their comments into the process. And then secondly, though, just as you were just saying, Pastor May, we could just wait till it's ready to review, and then we could call a special meeting if we want to kind of expedite getting the committee's input before it goes to the assembly.
Okay, as part of I guess what I would say a compromise in that regard is that if we had 3 committee members that wanted to work as a committee on it, once the document is set, as much as Assemblymember Dern would like to see it set, it could be disseminated again to the full committee, but those 3 persons could work on it, and then in our April 27th meeting, just like we did for this one and this meeting, have some kind of final resolution on it. Does that sound like a plan? Now, I have one other question in addition to that, and that question would be, which committee members would like to be part of that 3-person committee to sort of review and edit?
Yeah, I'll be one, but I just have a
Let's-
really
okay.
quick question.
Yes.
When are we expecting to have that document back from legal?
Dean told me that we would, oh, through the chair, I'm sorry. Dean told me that we would have the document back this weekend, sometime later this weekend. So we'll have that by early next week. If it doesn't go on if it's not ready by Thursday and it can't go on the first meeting in April, it could go on the April 25th if there were a special meeting. So, that's possible. But once legal has gone through it, I think it's just a matter of substance. So, hopefully it goes far enough and it says what it needs to say, and there shouldn't be like a lot of work to do. I'm reluctant. I want to be one of the 3 people, but at the same time, I'm reluctant in that if this goes further past my time, that could really set this back. So I'm happy to leave it with the committee, knowing that the committee has an interest in moving it forward. And so as soon as I get it from Dean, I'm happy to hand it over to 3 people that are going to be able to continue the work in case for any reason it goes past my time in this group. So I'm just going to put that out there.
Yeah, go ahead.
Through the chair.
Yes.
So once you're off the committee, on the assembly, you can actually join this committee and carry it across the finish line.
Perhaps, yeah. There is some rule, I'm sorry, through the chair, I'm sorry. There is some rule that that I'm not clear on, and I'm going to get clarification on in terms of how an assembly member who has left the dais is able to be involved after. There's some rule that I
The
don't.
rule is around employment, not around being.
Not around volunteerism. Okay. So yeah, I probably could join the committee.
Yeah, let me say this. This particular committee is a bit less formal than most committees. and you guys can quit through the chair stuff. For me, anyway. I'm not speaking for Ms. Thea, but for me, you can quit through the chair stuff and we can move forward. But thinking on that is, yeah, I see thumbs up. Thank you, Thea. And, relative to the former committee that we were discussing, we kind of, I guess, out-looped ourselves to a degree, and looks like we're about to kind of do that again. And what I mean by out-looped ourselves is, I was speaking specifically to the committee that you're speaking about her joining after she's off, and she's not specifically now a committee member, but we're trying to get a 3-person team from this committee to work on this resolution, which Assembly Member Dern is not necessarily a quote-unquote committee member.
Right.
And so I guess my point is, we still need, in addition to Ms. Celeste, we need 2 other persons who might want to work on this resolution. And so those of you who are online, I see you, Ms. Thea. Ms. Thea.
I can work on it. If we need another person, I'd be happy to work on it.
Okay, so we got 2. Is there a 3rd?
Mara?
Sorry, what?
I was saying Mara.
Yeah, I would very much appreciate it.
All right, so we have.
Robin, I would urge you to stay involved.
So we have 3 committee members who are willing to work on that, and I would say this, Assembly Member Dern, being that this was quote unquote, for lack of a better term, somewhat her baby, she could be a great resource person for this 3-member committee, sounding board, resource person or whatever, to get this done and back to us. Now, the thing of it is, in the timeline that we're looking at, either the 11th they were speaking of, on the 25th, those kind of meeting timelines. Is it doable for us? Thea, you think it's doable? Less.
I mean, it's doable for me. I'm assuming we can do some of it by email and.
Absolutely, I think it's doable, and I'm going to be out of town, so I'll have to do it by email or by Zoom or whatever, but I think it's doable.
Okay, so which timeline are we shooting for, the 11th or the 25th?
Through the chair. You know me, I'm always going for the first, so I say.
11th?
Yes.
Okay. Thea, how are you with that? Okay, and the Mara, you okay with that?
Yeah, I'm really good with that, especially because I think, and I can't remember the date, but I think it's like the 18th of April that is an International Remembrance Day. That's very relevant to this work.
Okay. All righty. So I think we have that settled with a good plan. All right. Did you have something, Mr. Sweet?
I was going to point out what Celeste did, which is that technically there isn't a timeliness element, but we've moved past that, unless there were other updates.
No, I thought you had an update.
Okay, good. Yeah, no. So I do have some updates. It's about the facial recognition ordinance that Felix, Daniel, and I are sponsoring. The work session for that is going to be tomorrow, and it will also be back before the Public Safety Committee for the meeting of the 5th, I believe. I don't know that we're actually going to get to speak to it on the 5th. It's listed under new business on their agenda, and their agenda is going to be quite busy, as all committee agendas typically are. We did get to speak to it at the previous Public Safety Committee meeting. It had already ran over the time limit pretty significantly. I think I had 6 minutes to talk about it. So I don't know what's going to happen with that, but it was introduced at this week's regular meeting of the full assembly. So it could be voted on as early as the next meeting of the 11th, which is certainly what I'm hoping for, particularly because we've got the work session tomorrow. I don't see much of a need to have it go before Public Safety Committee again, especially because even though it was just 6 minutes, there were 6 productive minutes. That's where I got Daniel on board as the other co-sponsor. You know, I did my little spiel. I didn't hear much in the way of opposition. I only heard support. So hopefully, with any luck, you know, especially if we can get some public testimony or something like that, some other kind of support, I think just passing it on the 11th is certainly what I'm hoping for. I'll speak more on it at that meeting, talk about the sort of 3 prongs, the first of which, as referenced before, is as a matter of equity and racial justice. So with any luck, we'll be able to get that across the finish line while I'm still a member. And if not, we've got 2 folks who can continue on the effort after my time has ended. Other than that, in terms of other updates, the only real one would be that I was able to attend the Alaska Black Caucus chat with the Assembly a few Sundays ago. That was a lot of fun. You can tell I must be really dedicated because I left the Oscars watch party that I was at to go attend it. And so if you saw me on video from that, like running around, that was because I was just upstairs in my friend's room while they were all downstairs going, yay, everything everywhere all at once one. So other than that, that's everything I've got.
Righty. Thank you both of you for your updates, and we're time-wise really questionable, and we've got a discussion here of housing and homelessness, and part of it is that we're to meet, I guess, have dialogue with the Housing and Homelessness Committee, what their priorities are, and how we could interface with them and be helpful as it relates to equity and that kind of thing. And so we have Mr. Rivera as one of the co-chairs of that particular committee here. And if we need to technically push the time back, we'll do so.
Great. So, if I understood correctly, you just want me to talk about what's going on at the Housing and Homelessness Committee?
That and what the priorities are and how we can interface. But also, I think there was a question relative to the statement that was made by one of the commissioners that we kind of wanted just a little input into that aspect of it as well.
Sure, yeah, I'm happy to go into that. So, first on what's going on in the committee and what the priorities are of the committee are the same thing. So, I don't have to have two discussions on that. So, I'm just going to start and really just talk through some of the items that have been on our agenda since February. So, the biggest thing that's been on our agenda for 3 or 4 months now is demobilization. And by that I mean the demobilization of our emergency shelter locations. So, those locations include the Sullivan Arena, the Alex Hotel, the Aviator Hotel, and the gymnasium of the Covenant House. So, for the last few months we've been talking about, really since about January, we've been talking about what it might look like for us to demobilize those facilities by April 30th. Contractually, the Covenant House contract for their facility, for their gym to be used as an emergency shelter location ends on March 31st, so next week. And contractually, the Sullivan Arena and Alex Hotel and Aviator Hotel will end their usage as emergency shelter on April 30th. So after that, we need to figure out what the plan is. So in January, we started looking at scope of what the issue looks like and started talking about a timeline of demobilization. In February, the administration presented their demobilization plan. In March, the Assembly started to continue to discuss the administration's demobilization plan as well as recommendations that we heard from the Emergency Shelter Task Force and the Anchorage Coalition to End Homelessness. And tomorrow, the Assembly will be having a special rules committee in which we will be discussing a draft demobilization plan that I will be presenting to that committee tomorrow, which basically incorporates some of the discussion points that we have had as a committee, that we discussed as a committee earlier this month. So that's the big thing that has been, for the last 3 months, we've been discussing a lot. We've also been talking about the Golden Lion and discussing how things have been going with the Golden Lion in terms of any of the needed repairs or the funding to get the Golden Lion open as housing. And there's a difference of opinion between the administration and the Assembly on the funding source that can be used for repairs for the Golden Lion. And the goal is really ASAP to get the Golden Lion up as housing. We've been talking about concerns at the Sullivan Arena. We've had some folks speaking before the committee about what they have seen at the Sullivan Arena. We've had people contact either the Assembly or Assembly members, like myself individually, about concerns at the Sullivan Arena. One of the things that we did is at a meeting, I think it was in February, at an Assembly meeting, we approved a document, basically an appropriation for funds for our emergency shelter plan through April 30th. And one of the things that we tacked onto that funding appropriation was a requirement for third-party oversight of the Sullivan Arena, the Aviator Hotel, and the Alex Hotel, so that we can ensure that those facilities are being well run and that the clients are getting the services that they need and that the contractor is fulfilling the terms of the contract. That third-party oversight was officially brought on board earlier this week. all of the T's were crossed and I's were dotted in terms of that contract for the third-party oversight, and I think next week I have my first meeting with them. They've been at the facilities this week, just trying to get a scope of how things are going presently at the facilities. The committee has also been discussing shelter licensing. So shelter licensing, I think, is a discussion that will likely evolve in that committee. So in 2021, the Assembly approved an ordinance that set up a shelter licensing scheme. Prior to that, there was no shelter licensing or really any tie-in between the municipality and shelters in terms of a regulatory tie-in. So this sets up that regulatory tie-in and ability for us to deal with complaints and other issues at shelters that are licensed within the municipality. So we talked, and reason that we talked about that in committee is because January 1st, 2023 is when that shelter licensing officially became active. So soon, all shelters within the municipality will have a provisional license, and then eventually they will have a permanent license. And then any new shelters, which is sort of the next part of the discussion the Assembly will be having, will also need to apply and acquire a shelter license. And then, yeah, the next phase of the discussion the Assembly is going to be having is with regard to new shelter in the municipality. Roughly, we know we need about 200 new shelter beds in the municipality, of which about 150 of those 200 need to be for year-round low barrier shelter. The other 50 of those 200 need to be for youth and families. So the Assembly is going to be having a lot of discussion around that 150. And the Assembly on Tuesday approved what I called the clean slate strategy for us to figure out how to have that discussion, and by November 1st of this year, set up the goal of opening that new 150 bed facility. Otherwise, some of the other discussions we've been having center around federal funds and how we are maximizing the usage of those federal funds to make sure that people don't go back into homelessness, and that we don't leave federal funds on the table. That we utilize as many of those dollars locally as possible. I think that fairly captures the discussion that we've been having since January 1.
Okay, relative to that aspect of it, do we need any clarification, or anybody have any questions for Mr. Rivera? I guess the only thing that probably would be on most person's mind committee-wise is actually in comparison to the beds needed or the homeless persons who are out there, even the data that shows beds needed, is it, I guess, in respect to those that are known, or, I mean, I'm sure there's a whole bunch of people out there that might not be in that database or what have you. Is that a correct assumption or whatever?
Yeah, thanks. So I think we used to have a lot of individuals who were unknown, but the municipality and especially through advocacy of the Assembly, we have increased our funding for outreach. And so outreach is how you get to know the unknown in the community, making sure that we are really reaching out and making sure that all of the individuals are in our data system, the HMIS, Homeless Management Information System. And so I would say that in terms of the fidelity of that particular system, I would say that it is pretty high. And you can tell just by looking at the data over the last several months of people experiencing homelessness in the municipality of Anchorage. The numbers have actually gone upward over the last several months because of the outreach that we funded, and so we're getting a more accurate picture of our community.
Righty. And we're going to be able to come close to sufficiently housing those that are homeless.
Yeah, thanks. So what I've been telling people is that in terms of shelter, so I'll speak to that first, and then I'll speak to housing. My hope is that by the end of this year, we will have met the sufficient shelter needs of our community. I'm not talking about emergency shelter, because I think we will always have a need for some type of emergency shelter, but year-round shelter needs, I think we will have met that by the end of this year. In terms of housing, we know that we need roughly about 2,400 additional housing units for people experiencing homelessness. And that will realistically take the community, because that's not just something the municipality can snap its fingers and solve on its own, will realistically take the community approximately 5 to 6 years to achieve that goal of that 2,400 units.
Wow. Okay. Anyone else have any questions for yes, ma'am. Ms. Dern.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just have a comment. I wanted to publicly thank Felix for his work on this, and I don't think that people understand how much time and effort he puts into this work. He and his colleagues on the Assembly that have been working on this for years and years and years, and especially those, Pete and Suzanne and Austin who are leading. I just wanted to publicly go on record and say it's pretty remarkable, and I hope that the citizens of Anchorage appreciate their efforts.
Awesome. And just relative to the massive amount of information that's being dispersed, we get the picture. There's a lot of work that goes into this. And so thank you, thank you, thank you. And if you could speak to a minute or two on the, and let me say before he gets started on that, as it relates to our committee, can we agree to extend our meeting time?
If they'll agree not to give me a ticket out here.
Oh.
I've used my 2 hours.
Yeah, so someone we need to talk to security just to make sure that doesn't happen. So.
Okay.
I have to leave, so I will talk to security.
Thank you. And I guess my recommend would be this, that we don't have to use it all, but if we could agree to extend for 15 minutes, and, okay.
I'll ask them to come if there's a problem.
Okay.
Thea had her hand up as well.
Ms. Thea.
Sorry, I'll just let my question pass. I just dropped audio right at the moment when Felix was giving some details. So, Felix, is the information you shared, is it on the website for the Rules Committee tomorrow? Because I could just look there.
So if you're talking about the demobilization plan, that is not up on the website just yet, but it will be up on the website for the Rules Committee soon.
Okay, and then you said that clean school.
You break it up.
It's okay. I'll follow up with you when I have better Zoom. It's really stormy here. Sorry.
You're good now. Yes, sir.
So you want me to talk about hand? Yeah. Got it. So yeah. So with regard to the hand commission, folks will remember that an individual member of the hand commission made some particular remarks that I and others found offensive, which led to myself and the vice chair, Christopher Constant, putting out a statement, and then eventually the mayor also putting out a statement. Part of the statement that I had requested that the individual resign. I believe, if I remember correctly, just based off of media reports, the individual declined my invitation to resign, and because boards and commissions, you cannot force individuals to resign. You have to go through this lengthy process to include review of the ethics board. None of that process has moved forward, and so pretty much is status quo at the moment.
Okay, status quo. And so I guess at this point there is no further backlash to the fact that the statements were made, and that's the end of the county.
Yeah, there really hasn't been any further dialogue since the statements were made. I made a statement with the vice chair, the mayor made a statement, and that's really been the end of it. There hasn't been any further discussion since then.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Rivera. Any questions on any of that? Input on any of that? All right, look like Ms. Thea has gotten off, and so with that, we'll move toward, if there's no questions and commentary, we'll move toward the conclusion of our meeting. We'll wrap up and prep for the next meeting and item identifications and all of that. We do know that we have two committees, three-person committees that have to get back to report and to the clerk's office, and so that's good. And then I think one of the things that we may need to do, and I guess I'll talk with the co-chair about that relative to our next meeting, which one of the assembly committees that we'll invite going forward for our next meeting. So I'll get a dialogue with Ms. Thea, and we'll come up with that and submit it to those, make the proper request, formal request to that particular committee, their chairs and co-chairs and what have you. And just FYI, and for me personally, and I know Ms. Jasmine, I know it's probably up on the website or whatever, but is it possible to shoot us or me, if nobody else needs it, a complete list of all of the committees and the co-chairs?
Yeah, so I can send it to you. We have a website that actually has all the breakdown of all the committees and the co-chairs and chairs, so I'll send that to you.
Right. I've looked at it before, but that would make it easy for me just to have it on in an email. I can go back to it without having to go back to the web. Yeah. I've been on that site, and then working on Okay, I've dealt with that as far as. Okay, I think those are things with those three-person committees getting back to Jazz and ultimately to the group. That would be the stuff that has to be done before next meeting, and then concluding on who our next committee would be. So, any additions?
No, sir.
Sounds like somebody left of us. Sounds like somebody left of us is ready to get up out of here. All right. All right. With that being said, then we don't have any audience participation. I want to thank our assembly members, Mr. Sweet and Ms. Dern in absentia, along with Mr. Rivera for being with us. And thank you, Mr. Rivera, for always loaning some clarity to rules, regulations, guidelines, and all of that kind of stuff. Keep us on our toes and in compliance, and we don't get Ms. Jasmine and her office in trouble, and all of that. Thank you ever so much. With that being said, I'll make the motion that we adjourn this meeting right now. Will you say?
Oh, yes.
All right. And we are in favor, so the meeting is over. Thank you, guys.